Hi, everybody, and welcome to this lovely Wednesday meeting. My name is Philip. I'm currently a senior Microsoft developer at PwC, uh, and I'm really glad I'm able to actually talk to you today. I think you're up for a great session, and hopefully you'll enjoy what we'll see, because this will be a very interactive session, or rather, a session where we will be developing lots of fun and cool things. So last month we witnessed another Microsoft conference, Microsoft Ignite. It's one of the two biggest Microsoft conferences that they have throughout the year. Another one being Microsoft Build. And I'm a keen watcher of those conferences. And usually when I watch them, it's not just all about technologies, but it's also about, like approach to stuff, how it's being developed. And usually when I watch those conferences, I was always looking at the content, whatever is being produced there. But recently, when I was watching that, I started to think more and more about how is it actually being made? How is it actually being performed? And I was just wondering if there's anything that I could do to recreate such a conference. And I had those thoughts. So let's straight away jump to the things that I was kind of thinking about when developing those things. The first thing is where to start. Now, obviously, I know that there is a camera somewhere within the studio. I assume there is also a production team, similarly to this conference where we also have a production team. And I know that there is me sitting in front of the PC and watching the conference, but everything in between is a black box. I know it's Microsoft. They have obviously Microsoft Azure. And now the question is there any service that I could use to actually leverage and create my own conference from my house? So I started digging out, and I was thinking, okay, is there any service that they might be using? Is it freely available? Am I allowed to use that? And then lastly, it's a large conference. Obviously, there are lots of viewers. There are lots of people who are watching that. And I was thinking, how do they manage such a huge amount of viewers? I mean, there's thousands of people watching that conference, or actually Microsoft Ignite, but also the other conferences from all over the world. And the question is, this obviously has a large amount of load on the system, but how do they actually allow such users to have a great experience while watching those conferences? So I did some research, and from my perspective, I think there is no better way for me to show you what I found and what's possible with Microsoft Azure and how to manage your videos and how to create your own conferences than actually having a live demo. Now, I want to point out one thing. Usually when we have those kind of demos, things can go wrong. Sometimes they do, sometimes things don't work, but I will try to fix them all the way on the way while we are developing new things. We are also an Azure ecosystem, so sometimes things take a while to deploy. I actually deployed lots of resources already, so we don't have to do that, and we won't waste time on waiting for the resource, and we'll go straight away to the content to be able to create an awesome conference. Lastly, feel free to ask questions. There'll be a short QA session at the end where we have time to answer all the questions that you have. And if you have more questions, we'll try to accommodate that within the session after the meeting. All right, so let's look at the website. Let's look at the Microsoft Ignite website. I'll just switch my screen to show you Microsoft Ignite website. And straight away, once I look at the page, I see Satya Nadella with a keynote in the middle over here. And on the bottom, I see highlights on demand. So this is talks that we're presenting during the conference. So I want to recreate my own conference, right? So I would like to create something that's very similar to Microsoft Experience. So I want to have this live portion that's being presented and also those highlights on demand. I mean, there are usually live sessions, but I can rewatch them now So basically we have a live session initially, and then we have on-demand session that's rewatchable afterwards. So let's create a list of things that we want to do. We want to have live streaming. I want to be able to present my keynotes the same way I'm presenting this presentation to you right now. And I want to have on-demand streaming such that the user is able to view all the videos afterwards. So let's go back to the question that I had initially. What services could I use? And while doing my research, I actually managed to find a resource that allows me to do just that. So let's go to Microsoft Azure, and let's try to deploy Azure Media Service resource. Oops. Sorry, wrong name. There we go. And in fact, this takes a while, so we'll just go through configuration. I'll show you how to configure the resource, how to create the resource, and then we will be working on the resource that's been already created. So initially, we have the resource group, which is a standard. Then we specify the media services account. This is the name of our resource. We specify our location, and then we see something that's called storage account. The storage account is being used to store your assets. So whenever you upload a video, it's being stored within Azure storage. So you don't have to worry about where it's being stored. Do I have access to that? You always have access to that because that's a managed resource by you. So you have this storage account that's created and that's connected to your Azure Media Services. And lastly, we have user assigned managed identity. There isn't much of a documentation why is that being used, but my assumption is that this is due to multiple media services account being created and required to have like a super large conference. So instead of creating managed identity for every single resource, we just create a single user assigned managed identity, and that's how we connect to the storage account. All right, so we fill out all these values, and what we end up with, let me just jump to my already existing media service account. And we end up with a screen like that. Now, I'm working on a live streaming solution. I want to be able to produce the data from my house all the way to your screens. I have a camera, you have the screens, and I also have a screen in front of me. And when I analyze the view on the left-hand side, I can see a live streaming tab that allows me to create a live event. So let's try to create a live event such that I'm able to show you what's being produced. So in order to configure a live event, you just create a live event name, and then you have to decide whether you want to have event type pass-through or standard encoding. Now this is a pretty important decision that you have to make at this point because you're not able to change it afterwards. But usually the way it kind of works is that when you have a pass-through, you're responsible for creating all the signal in various bit rates. So for instance, if I want to allow the users to watch my video in 720p or in 1080p or in lower resolution or high resolution, I'm responsible for creating the signal. And then the signal just goes from my PC, or my PC is basically a signal provider, passes to Azure. That's where the standard pass-through name comes from, and then gets propagated to the users. Now, the other option is standard encoding, and this is a slightly different option because in this scenario, I'm just creating a single signal. I'm passing that then to Azure. Azure is performing live encoding, so it creates, for instance, like lower resolutions of that video. So if I'm uploading 720p, it creates all the lower resolutions to allow for the lower bandwidth if someone has a worse connection, and then propagates that to users to the endpoint such that they're able to change the the kind of the quality of the video that they're watching. So from the perspective of the user, it looks exactly the same. From a perspective of a content creator, or rather production team, it looks very differently, because the responsibility of producing the signal is either on my side in case of a pass-through, or on the Azure side in terms of a standard encoding. Usually when we think about that, we use standard encoding because it's easier for the machines to produce a single bitrate and then encode that within the Azure, because it doesn't affect our PC, so it's much simpler. So let's actually create the live event, and I want to become a Azure star, so you can watch me worldwide. So I'm going to create a live event. Again, I'm just going to configure this. It takes a few seconds, but we don't want to waste time on deploying stuff. We want to get going. So we create a live event name. We would create a standard encoding. And then we can see that once we select standard encoding, I mean, we don't have that for the pass-through. For the standard encoding, we specify the latency that we want to have. This obviously comes from the encoding part itself, because it takes some time to encode my input. So for this, you can use regular latency or lower latency, but the low latency is currently in preview. And at the end, we create something that's called a streaming locator, but I will get to that just in a second. So we fill out all these values, and then we proceed to the Advanced tab. And the nice feature that Microsoft Services has is a live transcription. So given my conference talk, I'm actually able to provide you with a live transcription, such that the users, for example, who can't listen to the audio, can still participate in this session. And once you click on the live transcription, you can specify English United States, and it will automatically generate the captions for you. So assuming this configuration, we create the live event. And what we end up with is something similar to my Expert Summit live event. And this is the initial screen that we see. So now I'm just inches away from being a major conference star, and being able to provide my content worldwide. So I want to go straight away into my live session, such that we don't waste time, and I can provide you with my keynote. So I click on Start. This is usually pretty fast. There we go. And as you can see, on the left-hand side, I have input settings, and on the right-hand side, I have outputs. Now, as for the inputs, it also has the camera icon, which I think is pretty cool. I can just take the input URL, and I will use a classic OBS Studio, which is a no-brainer for all the streamers, or for starting streaming stars. I have a camera from my other device, and I will pass my signal to Azure. In order to do that, I just copy the URL that was provided within Azure, paste that within OBS, and stream key doesn't matter. I can just put whatever I want there, apply, and start streaming. And now I'm super close to being somewhat similar to Satya Nadella. So there we go. My input is loading, and now you can see my screen, what I'm actually currently passing to Azure. So I'm now sending my data from my PC to Azure, but I'm not sending the data away from Azure all the way to your screens. So let's go ahead and configure that. So I'll create an output. And there are two things that we need to create. One of them is the output itself, and this is the asset that will be created at the very end. So there will be, so if I have a recording that's 6 hours long, I have something that's called, I have to specify something that's archive length, and anything that's, for instance, above 6 hours in this scenario. I'm just taking from the perspective of this archive length, and anything above 6 hours will be straight away deleted from the storage. So when you specify the output, please be aware that the archive length matters, and the session that you are creating, it must be within those limits, because otherwise the users won't be able to rewatch the whole session that you just created. So let's create the output. I have the asset, I have the storage account, and let's add a streaming locator. And now the streaming locator is a pretty important thing within the whole Azure Media Services ecosystem, because I have an input, I have output where I will be storing my data, but now I have to define how I'm going to distribute my content to you. In order to do that, I'm creating something that's called a streaming locator. So this specifies how the content, how the users who have the particular URL will be able to watch my stream. So I'm going to create a default streaming locator. I also have this streaming policies. Now those streaming policies are talking about the requirements in order for you to obtain that URL and to watch that stream. So I have clear streaming only, for instance, and that means that in this scenario, I'm providing you with the option to stream the data. I have the download only. This means that you are not able to stream the data, but just download the data. And I also have a multi-DRM, and this means that DRM stands for digital rights management, and this means that it's the data is encrypted and hidden behind the digital rights management. And in order for me to watch it, I need to obtain a license, and then once I obtain the license, I go with my license to Azure Media Services, and then provides me with the data. So you can think of it as, for instance, all the like MMA fights where you have to buy pay-per-view. You go to the license server, it provides you with the access key, and then you watch the whole stream. So I'm just going to create a default one, and I'm going to specify expiration time to 200 years. This means that the users will be able to watch that live stream for another 100 years. So I'm creating a live output. And now we have a pop-up with the streaming URLs. Now, I've mentioned, so let's recap. So I have input from my camera sent to Azure. Azure is storing my data within a storage account. I have a streaming locator that allows me to distribute the data and control the data the way I kind of want to. And now I have to send the data from Azure to your screen. And this is achieved via streaming endpoint. So I have two streaming endpoints, but I'm just going to use the default one for now. Azure Media Services actually comes up with, by default, you already have one existing streaming endpoint. And I just click done, and my content should be delivered via that one streaming endpoint. Now, as you can see, on the left-hand side, I have a producer view, and on the right-hand side, I have my audience view. So this is something that you could watch. Worth noting, I can just have 171 concurrent viewers at that particular bitrate. That's pretty poor. I have the streaming locator, and then I have the playback URL. So let's try to build our own Microsoft Ignite page. I've created this small, definitely not Ignite page, where I will try to emulate the behavior on Microsoft Ignite page. I will have my live stream over here, and I will have my on-demand assets on the bottom. So I've created a small React app for that. There's nothing really fancy about that, but the most important element of that is something that's called a video player. Now, when you look at this media player, there is one thing that you might be thinking, why do I need that media player? Well, the reason is quite simple. If I just take that URL that was produced and I just copy it, and I'll show you that within a new text file, I'm actually not getting an MP4 or direct URL. I'm getting something that's called, that ends with manifest. It specifies the format. And yeah, sure, I will just zoom in a little bit if I can. Let me just see if I can zoom in. I'll try to fix that. Oh, there we go. So I have my Azure Media Player. So I have this manifest, and within that manifest, it doesn't actually allow me to play back the video straight away. So, and this is the way the kind of Azure Media Services works. It creates a URL and a manifest for the media player to interpret. And on the documentation of Azure Media Player, or Azure Media Services, sorry, it specifies that you can use few supported media players to run your video. In this scenario, I'm using an Azure Media Player, which is default and which is it's not default, but it's the one that Microsoft Build is using, and it's kind of the one that is on the top of the list as suggested. So that's what I'm going to be using. So I just have this Azure Media Player. This is just a simple class that I have. There's nothing fancy about that. And then I have, yeah, I think this is the most important part. So I will just, I have a sample data where we'll input our manifest. So this sample data is being read within my home controller on the top. So I'm interpreting this sample data as my live URL and my on-demand videos, and I'm creating a video player on the top, and then I'm creating my on-demand video. So let's look at the thing that we produced. All right, so this is me on the screen, just having my keynote, and this is my live stream that's still ongoing, there where you can still watch all my things. So I just created my own keynote. I'm becoming a conference star. But as I showed you earlier, and let's get back to our live event, I just have 171 concurrent viewers, and that doesn't make me a global star, but rather a local, and that's won't cut it. So I want to go global, and how can I do that? Well, I can't change streaming locator because that's not responsible for because that's just responsible for distributing the content. But I can modify the streaming endpoint to allow more users to use that endpoint. So I'm going back to my streaming endpoint, and if once I actually click on my default streaming endpoint, I can see the configuration over here. It has an egress limit of 600 megabits per second. There's a content delivery network and some kind of some kind of estimation of the audience reach. But let's maybe try to create our own new streaming endpoint. So I'm just going to call it the global streaming endpoint. I'm actually not going to deploy it, but we're going to configure that. And straight away, we can see two decisions. We have standard. So this is the one that I just showed you earlier. It is just able to have that bandwidth of 600 megabits per second. Or I can go for premium. And in that scenario, I can specify the number of workers that I will use to stream. So as you can see over here, it also specifies that you can have that each streaming unit is 200 megabits per second. So if I have 3, that's around the standard size. So if I specify 50, that's pretty costly solution, but this will increase the number of users that I can host. And I'll show you the numbers just in a second. Lastly, we have the content delivery network, and this is something also that you can configure. And why would you need that? Well, content delivery network is very useful in terms of using your live stream, because if you have multiple users watching from a similar region, you don't have to send the data all the way from your streaming endpoint to your user every single time, but rather than that, you can use your content delivery network, which then is able to pass the data to your end users, and therefore it doesn't create such a huge load on your endpoints. So you're able to host more. So estimation is that you will be able to host more viewers because of the content delivery network, because the content is already closer to the user, and if there are multiple users, they can just share the same data that they're watching. So in this scenario, you can specify standard Verizon, premium Verizon, or none, and that's it. So I've created already some endpoints, and let's see the numbers and how we can, what's the biggest load that we can produce. So on my endpoint, once I've the one I already have, I can click on scale, and I can change the endpoint time from standard all the way to premium. And if I go for 50 streaming units, you can see that I can currently have 2,857 viewers. Now that's pretty cool, but that's obviously not global. I know that this is the highest quality, assumed this bandwidth, but this is still just 2,800 viewers. I want to have more viewers than that. I want to have thousands of viewers, in fact. So let's look at CDN. So I have a streaming endpoint. This is a standard streaming endpoint, and I have a premium Verizon CDN deployed on that. And straight away, we can see I have 1,714 concurrent viewers that will be that's estimated to watch my stream. That's over half of what I had on the premium tier with the maximum number of workers. But I can also adjust that. So if I go to scale and I change it to 50, now you can see that I'm able to host 28,571 viewers. So I just went few thousands, like I've almost like multiple times of what I had earlier. So just with that, with the CDN and the assumption that the users will be watching that, the estimation is that I will be able to host 30,000 viewers. And there's also the estimation of the location. You can adjust the estimation based on the CDN cache, and the numbers will obviously go higher, but it's just an estimation, obviously. So with that being said, I can now host 30,000 viewers just on that one streaming endpoint. Now within Azure Media Services, you can have at most 2 endpoints. Doesn't matter if they are stopped or they're running. If you want more, you have to ask Azure to change the quota, which in this scenario means that if I have 2 endpoints with premium CDN and the maximum number of premium workers, that means that I'm able to host approximately 50,000 viewers, which is already a pretty good solution. And and if there is a requirement to host more, I can either I can just ask Azure to increase the quota and provide the reason why I need that. All right. So with that being said, I'm still running on my website, on my endpoint, so on my default endpoint. So now it's time to go back to our list and see what we managed to create. So we managed to create live streaming, and it's a pretty good live streaming in terms of a number of viewers that we can have. Why? Well, I just managed to create 50,000 potential, 50,000 viewership. I'm able to scale. I'm able to go lower if I need to. It's all adjustable. I'm sending the data all the way from my camera on my laptop, going through Azure, using Azure encoding. I can add a transcription in the meantime. And then at the very end, it's being distributed via stream locator. And then the stream locator is being passed to endpoints, which is something that you are using to watch my stream. Now, I mentioned one more thing about stream locators, because this might be slightly confusing to you. Like, I understand output, I understand input, I understand endpoints, but I'm not sure how the content key policies work. Well, I'm just not going to go into much detail of how what's being produced over there, but if you just create a new content key policy, you can specify a few providers that provide you with that key. That's Widevine, that's by Google, that's Fairplay, I believe that's by Apple, and PlayReady, and they provide you with the license for the video, which you then use within media services to get the video, or you can just use AES Clear Key, and this is something that you can manage yourself. Okay, so my live streaming. Now I'm done with my live streaming, so let's stop my stream. And my stream is now stopped. Or it should be. And now when I look at my website, I don't see the live sign anymore. I mean, it's not scrolling anymore. So by default, my video changed from live stream to on demand. And this is similar to the scenario that we have over here. So we had this key moments, this keynote, or even these sessions. They were recorded live, and as soon as they finished, no configuration had to be changed, and the video is already available on demand. And now you might be wondering, okay, why is that? Well, the reason is quite simple and goes back to the streaming locator. The streaming locator and the endpoint doesn't change. Streaming locator specifies how to distribute the content. My endpoint didn't change in this scenario. So all I had to do was basically nothing. I didn't have to change a single line of code, and my video went from live streaming to on-demand streaming, and that's it. So once we go back to our list, we had live streaming, and we wanted to build on-demand streaming, and just quickly as that, we built on-demand streaming. So no code needed, nothing had to be changed. Everything is already straight away available at the out of the box. All right. So with that being said, let's actually try to improve my website, and let's add let's try to add an on-demand view, and I'm just gonna use my video again. So just to create some kind of placeholder. So I'm gonna take, going back to my app, I have my on-demand video, and my on-demand video is just a pure URL string. So there's nothing really special about that. It also uses the same video panel. So there is no configuration that required. And initially I will just put my placeholder with my live streaming over there, sorry. And once we go back to the website and refresh my website, this is my keynote and this is my recording. So, yay, I've just built my Microsoft Ignite website. I have my keynote that's being recorded. I have my on-demand stream, which I had to do literally nothing about. And you can still watch that. So you can click here, you can click here, just whenever you decide, you can watch it. So going back to our list, just to sum it up, on-demand streaming is done. But usually I work for a consultant. I'm a currently Microsoft developer at PwC, so I work for a consultancy. So we do lots of kind of webinar sessions, and even when you work for a large company, you might be using a slightly different resource for streaming. Now, if you already have an existing media, or I would say Azure solution within your company, you might be considering something that's called migration. And why would you do that? Well, firstly, if you have your Azure ecosystem and you have your external provider, you're paying for two services. I mean, obviously, Azure is required because that's your kind of, let's say, that's your business essential kind of core system. But the other thing is purely optional, and you can migrate that optional dependency that you have to Azure and keep everything within one place. So how would we go about that? So let's look back at our Azure Media Services. There we go. And let's look at our media service. Now we have something over here that's called, or rather, let's start with looking at the assets. So these are the assets that I've created. These are some of the ones that I had already before while I was preparing, but this is my live event. If I click on that, you can see my live event. And this is asset. So whenever I have a video that I upload to media services, that's called an asset. Now, over here, I have an option to upload my video. So what am I actually trying to do at this particular moment? So I'm trying to take my video that's from in another provider. I can download that video as a MP4, let's say, and I just want to upload that straight away to media services. And I will try to do that. I have my amazing MP4 video with the planet spinning that's migrated from my other provider, and I will upload that to my assets. So let's try to put this on my website and create an on-demand resource from my page. So my web page would look like me being on the top, and on the bottom you see the planet spinning, and that's my on-demand video that I have within my kind of conference portal. So again, I have my video over here. That's my asset, and based on the video that I've uploaded, I have my endpoint, which is distributing the content, and I need to create the streaming locator, which defines how the asset will be distributed to the end user. I'm going to just create a clear streaming only. I'm not using any digital rights management in this scenario. And I'm specifying that will be available for another 100 years. That's created. And now my video should be playing, but it's not. And now you might be thinking, okay, that's wrong. That shouldn't be the case. Well, unfortunately, the issue is that once we go back at the URL that we had over here, I had something that's called manifest. And over here, within this on demand, I just had something that I just uploaded, and it's a pure MP4. And when I look at the storage container for this asset, I just have a pure MP4 over here. And once I go back and look at my live event, I have lots of data, and I also have the manifest data over here. So what I need to do is encode my video. Now, what does encoding mean? So encoding means that I'm taking my video and I'm processing that to, let's say, different bit rates. And this is something that's very similar to already, it's basically the same thing that I mentioned already earlier in terms of live events. So I'm passing the data to Azure, it's performing the live encoding to enable larger bandwidth or a smaller band, or like a larger quality video and smaller quality video, such that the users would, independent of the network, can watch the video. And this is exactly the same thing that's happening over here. So I'm just creating a transform, which is, we can go to the transform. I'm just specifying the name, I'm specifying the encoding, and I'm specifying what I'm trying to gain from that encoding. So in this scenario, you can specify that I want to get multiple bit rates 1080p, or I want to get single bit rate, or I want to get 4K, or can have something that's basically adapted for streaming. So I just created this. Oh, let me just go back. I created this transform name, and it has the preset that's called adaptive streaming, because I want to be able to have my migrated resource I want to kind of take my migrated resource that I had in Azure Media Services and being able to stream that data. So I have my transform, and I'm just going to add a new job. And now the asset, I just specified the asset that I migrated that is not working at all. I specified the already existing transform, and this is just the job priority. You can specify that it's high, and then it will be processed faster. We don't really care about that at this point. So let's give that a second. Sorry, sometimes it takes a second. There you go. Let's go back. There we go. Okay, so now it's being encoded. This is our asset. And once we look at our assets, we can compare. So this is the original MP4 that we had. And after our transformation, we have lots of new files that's being created, including the manifest and the configuration files. So now once I am within my encoded value, I can now specify that I want to run it on the same endpoint, and I want to create a new stream locator. Again, this is just going to be a default setting for the next 100 years. You're going to be able to watch that. And now, as you can see, it's playing, and you're able to watch my stream on demand and change the quality as you wish. Now, I'm going to place that within my website just to quickly show you that it's possible to have that within my website. And you might notice one thing. The initial URLs are exactly the same. And the reason is quite simple. The streaming endpoint is not limited just to one streaming locator or just one streaming asset. So I specify endpoints, and endpoint can host multiple streaming locators. It doesn't mean there's not, obviously, due to just two endpoints being, I'm just able to produce two endpoints within Azure Media Services. This obviously would be a limitation that I could watch at most two videos, but in this scenario, I can hook up as many streaming locators to the endpoints as I wish, and they are then available under like unique URLs. All right, so hopefully I've just shown you that migration is possible. So I've taken an asset from an existing resource. I initially just wanted to upload that to Azure Media Services. And I wanted to make it as kind of like a streamable asset, but that's not possible because I don't have the manifest specification. But then, so I used transforms and jobs to encode my videos to allow for the video to be streamed, and I was able to use the same endpoint to host two of my streams. And with that being said, I've done actually more than build. So I've done live streaming, I'm able to deliver my keynote, my on-demand streaming, and I've done my migration. But we can do much more. And once we look at the website that's being created by Microsoft Build, once you click on the website, there's this nice feature. It has a tags, it has some information, and so I put that within my list, and I called it Insights. Now, when we have that list, those tags, those information, they can be either produced manually, and in this scenario they most probably are, such that there are tags, people, there's obviously description of the description of the bio, of the description of the session, bio of the people, so that's all nice. But we also have, but we are also able to, I would say differently. I was wondering whether we are able to automate those things and get more insights from our videos. And it turns out that Azure actually has something service that allows you to do just that. And it's called a video indexer. So what is a video indexer? You might be thinking. I will straight away jump to video indexer portal. We'll click on the sample just to get the feel of what we are trying to build. And we just use the modern web development. This is a sample that's being provided by Microsoft. And as you can see, just within that one kind of page, I have player on the left-hand side with the name. And on the right-hand side, I have lots of information that's being taken out of the video. Now, this is super powerful device, or rather tool, because it allows you to create kind of like a knowledge library. So also within consulting, we do lots of sessions where, for example, we talk about different things. And just having a video that doesn't provide you with any information, or rather you just create that video and then you forget about it, is kind of misses the point. You want to like be able to search for that data. So using this insights, just within that one video, we are able to see people that are within this video. We can see where they are. We can see topics that they've covered. We can see the keywords. It has like labels, named entities. It even like takes care of, like, it even looks into emotions, creates thumbnails. It's a super powerful solution. And I just had to input my video over there, and it's creating all the work for me. And you might be thinking, okay, that's fine. Okay, that's some information. That's some data. I can just see the people. I don't care about that. But there's one more additional useful thing, and that's transcript. So within that video, I have a full transcript of all the things that were kind of found within this text. I can also obviously fix that in case something was not found, but I have a transcript. I can also add a new language, which will be then available over here. So it's a super powerful solution to build your knowledge library within your firm. And let me just show you one more thing. So when I look at the samples, there was a .NET MVC keyword over there. And once I have this .NET MVC search, it queries all the videos and it shows me all the data within the transcript. So I'm now looking for a kind of like a knowledge cloud that allows me to search for data that I'm looking for. So let's integrate that into our solution. And let's try to do that pretty quick. So just how to create that video indexer summit. Kind of like a similar resource to that. I just specify a resource group, I specify the resource name, the region, and I specify media services account name. Now this is basically connected to media services, and the reason is that all the data that's being produced within the video indexer is actually being stored in our media services account. So these two tools are actually complementing each other. So media services provides me with the capability to encode and live stream the data, while video indexer provides me with capabilities to gain more insights into my data, but everything is still stored within our media services account. And then I just create a managed identity to access the media service account. So I've already created that. And as you can see, there is not much over here, and then there's just the portal and the API. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the REST API. It doesn't have an SDK as of now, so you have to do all the work manually to upload your asset from your media service to your video indexer. Let me just check one more thing. Sorry. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Yep, there we go. Okay. Let me just. So we're gonna use just a Postman to simulate that. So I'm going to use the REST API. So this is the only way, as far as I know, that currently is supported. And I'm just using the API video indexer AI. I'm using the location of my resource, that's West Europe. I'm using the account ID of the video indexer that I've specified. And now I'm going to explain to you what's happening over here. So I have the privacy video. I have the priority is low. This is similar to job. I have language. I have the preset. So this is how much insights I want to get of my video. I have streaming presets. So what do I want to have as an output? I want to have a stream. Send success email. This is basically an email that you get after your video is being indexed. And then we have the asset ID, which is the asset ID within my media services that I want to process. So let's generate a key quickly. I go to contributor and I go to account. I'm just going to generate a key for my video indexer account because I need to be authenticated to do all the things within video indexer. And let's upload our asset. There we go. My asset has been uploaded and I can see that it's being processed. It has 5%. I would need to wait for this to complete. But in the meantime, I have, it's worth noting also that you can store the ID. But in the meantime, you can also search for the data within your video indexing. I already have a video and I'll just show you that quickly within the video indexer. Oops, maybe I don't. Let me just quickly upload, or rather that. Okay, that should be here. Okay, let's just use a sample. So you can upload that video over here, and once that's being done, sometimes the portal has just those kind of weird lags. We're able to search for that resource. I already have all those resources over here. So these are some videos that I've tested on, and for all these videos, you can now get the streaming URL, you can get the insights URL widget and the player widget. So there are two separate things. One is the player widget and one is the insight widget on the left-hand side. So I'll just quickly show you what can we do. So I'm going to get the streaming URL. This is the URL that I have for the stream. And once I ask for the widget, it says token expired, but this is a slightly different token than I had over here, because what you have to do, in fact, sorry for the audio, is to go to your video indexer asset over here, go to your management, and you have to give an explicit allowance to that video. So I have to copy the video ID that I have. So I'm gonna use that video ID. That one? No, it's not that one. It's that one. So I'm just going to copy that video ID. I'm going to get a specific allowance to work on this video ID. And now I'm going to pass my request. And I'm going to get my insights widget and my player widget. And these are two widgets that you can place within your website. You can then pass them left and right and create a similar experience to what you had within your within a video portal. So I hope I've shown you that Insights provides you with lots of valuable data. You're able to get more insights of your videos. You're able to create a search library. And to sum it up, I want to say that Azure Media Services and Video Indexer are great tools that you can use to complement each other to create a powerful solutions. Azure Media Services is great to stream your data, to create live events, to store your assets so that you don't have to use them in another provider. And it also allows you to encode your videos to get a different, to basically extend your viewership. And Video Indexer is great to get more insights into your data and allows you to create a library to search your data through. With that being said, I think that's it from my side, and I'm open for any questions if there are any. There will be also a possibility to have a session afterwards where we can discuss more things. There's a question. What happens if the service is stopped because of conservation and my team continues to upload videos as part of their daily routine? Do I have to resend all the videos? Do you mean the Azure Media? If you mean the Azure Media Services resource, I haven't tested that. But if you try to upload the video once that's being stopped, you always get an error from the REST API. All the endpoints will be obviously down, so you need to have the service up and running in this scenario, and the assets. If you try to upload video while the service is down, you will obviously get an error of the. You will get the error of actually trying to even try to perform an operation on the website. So yeah, there is no way to do that unless obviously you have an already running job and you stop the media services. I haven't tested that. I assume in this scenario it could potentially kill your transform, but I had never experienced that from my perspective. Thanks for the question. How do I calculate the cost of the service? Is there any calculator for forecasting? Yes, there is. And in fact, if we could go back to Portal, let me just find my screen. There we go. Yeah, could we possibly switch? Oh, there we go. Let me just switch back to Portal quickly. Awesome. Okay. Can you guys see Portal or not? Yeah. So once you look at the pricing of that, the video indexer and media services usually have the same pricing schemas, and they are based on the they are based on the output on the output minutes that you are creating. So sorry, there we go. My screen just flipped the other way around. So we have price per, it's actually price per input minute in case of video analysis. But for Azure Media Services pricing is calculated based on the output minutes. So, sorry, is there a way to, I'll just have this in Polish and I'll just translate. This is output minute, but for the encoding, it's output. So, so it's all dependent. Obviously, it's calculated based on the evaluation that's the most beneficial in this scenario. For analysis, it's it would be input also for the video indexer. I mean, it doesn't convert anything. It just provides you with the insights to the data that you have. So it has to process every single minute. But for encoding, it's output. Yeah. So the way you kind of calculate that is you take all those considerations. Actually, this pricing table has a great great examples on the bottom of how to calculate that. Do we have possibly any other questions? Emotion.json. If that's within video indexer file, I assume that you might not be using the correct preset for the analysis that you're trying to do. So when you do a browse for file, and I, for example, try to analyze my data, you need to make sure that this indexing is specified to audio, and this has those kind of presets based on that. It's kind of weird that you didn't have the emotion JSON. I assume there might be a case that it didn't find anything, but that would be just my my assumption. We could look into that maybe after the session if you'd like to join us afterwards. Do we possibly have any more questions? All right, so I think with that being said, I think I have one more thing to do. We have a contest also, which is sponsored by PwC. I have a quick quiz about the things that we discussed today. You can actually go to the URL or just scan the QR code. What we are actually, so there's a pretty cool package to win. So I highly encourage you. Yeah, it's based on the things that we discussed today, so it should be pretty trivial. And with that being said, could we possibly show the URL once again, if that's the possibility? Or rather, yeah, awesome, great, thank you. And with that being said, I think that's it from my side. I hope to see you soon on another conference. I hope you enjoyed the session. If you have any questions, I will be available at the PwC stand for the few next minutes, so feel free to pop in and ask me a question. I'll be happy to answer any queries that you have. Thank you very much.